Welcome, everybody. We're just going to give it a couple minutes, but thanks so much for attending today.
Hello.
How's it going?
Excited.
A lot of people attending today. This is exciting.
Hey, Kat.
Hey, Kat.
Oh yeah, you can. How do you
Should we
turn off
mute those
the?
sounds?
Yeah, right in the bottom. Right in the bottom at the bell.
Got it.
There we go.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello from Barcelona. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm always impressed how global Notion's audience is.
We are too.
Yeah.
Hello,
So
France, Santo Domingo, Buenos Aires, Bucharest. Wow.
So
I feel like I don't have to travel to these places, you know?
Yeah.
This is like
I'm there and I feel like I'm there.
Well, you're sure this isn't a Lonely Planet webinar or something, Oasis?
I share pictures from my vacation with my wife. And then starts to go. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen. Hello from Russia.
Oh, Dobro požalovat.
Huh?
Oh, just hello from Russia. Dobro požalovat.
Oh.
Wow. Well, we're a minute in. I think we can go ahead and get started. A lot of exciting stuff to cover today. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the format of this session, it's what we call a hot seat. We're doing with Marie and Ben. The hot seat session, it's our second one. The goal is really for it not to be a product demo, but it's really supposed to be a real team, in this case, a real founder and a really early stage startup trying to use Notion, improving their use case of Notion, and figuring out new ways to do things in the product. So it's like opportunity to ask all those nuanced questions that arise in the moment of building. Notion's such a wide product. You can do a lot of different things. We want to make sure it's very tactical advice that we share. Marie is probably the most knowledgeable Notion user we have. She co-founded her company with Ben. And I'm Oasis. I work on SMBs and startups at Notion. For this, I was a founder, had gone through that whole process of founding a company and raising money. And I did all of that in Notion. So had the personal experience of how powerful a platform it can be and a lot of things I still don't know. So what we're going to cover today, I'm going to pass it over to Erik in a moment. He's going to talk through how they use Notion, a specific use case that he's trying to improve, and then just kind of be a real walkthrough. We'd love your open-ended questions. Throw them in the chat, whether they're related to the session or not. But yeah, feel free to ask those product questions. This is your opportunity to do so. So Erik is joining us today. He leads product and growth as one of the early employees at this company called Cron. It's special to me because I was in their YC batch with them. And I actually am a heavy user of the product at Notion. So we'll share the link. You should check them out after. But it's really, the app helps you shift your Google Calendar into pro mode. Basically superhuman, but for calendars. Erik, I hope I explained that well. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Erik just to talk a little bit about the company they're building, the product, and then it's going to give you a tour of the Notion setup.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for the warm welcome, Oasis. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. So just as a reminder, I'm Erik. I head product and growth at Cron. Really excited to be here. This to me kind of feels like a little WWDC event, and I'm the lucky developer that gets to come up and share a little bit about what I'm working on and nerd out about Notion. So this is going to be really exciting. As Oasis mentioned, Cron is a better calendar. We're building for professionals and next generation teams. And it's really exciting because we have some people at next generation teams like Notion, like Oasis, already using Cron. And Notion and Cron are very similar. I like to think of Notion as handling the knowledge layer of my life. So I've got my personal notes, work notes, brainstorms, internal wikis, all on Notion. And then Cron handles the time layer of my life. So anything that I'm doing regarding my time or how I'm spending my time, I schedule all of that in Cron. And just like Notion, Cron is highly collaborative. Collaboration's built into the core experience. It's super visual. It just kind of works how you'd expect it to. And it's really customizable. So And then the elephant in the room is probably, hey, why haven't I heard of Cron before? And why are you guys here? Well, we've actually been heads down building an awesome calendar for you. And so we're just coming out of stealth now, still in stealth, but just emerging. And if we have a little bit of time at the end of the webinar, I'll share a little bit more about how you can request early access at cron.com, if that sounds all right.
I'm intrigued.
So would it be best if I just walked through a couple of, our use cases and how we use Notion at Cron?
Yeah, definitely show us, because you guys have a pretty advanced space. We took a sneak peek and we saw the video that you guys showed of your space. I think you've done a lot of pretty already advanced stuff. So give us a little bit of a tour and show us some of the stuff that's working really well in your space. And then we can dip into the stuff that is like, oh, we could be doing this a little bit better.
Okay, awesome. Sounds great. And as I screen share, I'm not going to have access to the chat. So if there's any questions that come in, please just flag that and let me know. Sound good?
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, Kat was just saying you had my attention when you said it's like Notion.
Okay, great. Yeah.
You're off to a great start.
Yeah, we love Notion at Cron, and hopefully Notion loves Cron as well. And there's definitely a ton of parallels between the two apps. Okay, so I'm turning screen share on. Can everyone see my screen? Should be a little bit of screen sharingception here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is our homepage. And at Cron, we are very, very heavy Notion users, and we use Notion both internally and externally. And I'll go through a couple of use cases in both the internal and external worlds, and then get into a couple of areas where we'd like to improve with Marie and Ben. So you'll notice here that we're at the homepage. We structure our workspace under various umbrellas. And so this is all internal. We have home, which is kind of a tutorial on how to get everything. We view Notion as a second brain. And so we're really familiar with this Command K shortcut to search for and query information in this shared database. We run all of our product development on Notion. And so this means we have our product roadmap here. We collect all of our user feedback in Notion as well, and then close our loops with our different user communication software. We have our design wiki here in Notion. So this is an overview of how we design our UI interaction principles, our UX interaction principles. So this is kind of like the internal wiki use case. Engineering wiki as well. We run strategy, hiring, ops. Basically, all of our core internal processes are all in Notion. And from an external point of view, this is where things get really exciting. We have this Cron calendar page, which is a Notion homepage. And I'll just switch into an incognito view. So this is what you'd see if you were signed in as anyone on the internet and you just visited the Cron calendar page. And what it really is an extension to cron.com. And so what we've found is the beauty of Notion and creating different Notion pages and then sharing them instantly to the web is that it's so low commitment. It's so easy for us to just spin out these different pages that it's actually easier than creating and pushing to the cron.com repo, creating pages and pushing to the cron.com repo. So we just actually create a lot of these pages directly in Notion, right in here, and then share them to the web, and then anyone can go and check them out. And so what we've done so far is we've created 3 categories of pages. We have guides, and these are really great, and these serve as user education. So for example, one of the awesome features in Cron is that we support multiple Google accounts. So you can log into as many different Google accounts as you want right in Cron. And so if I click through here, you'll notice that this is a tutorial on how to do that. And this is all hosted in Notion. And so anytime we have a user ask about, hey, how do I connect multiple Google accounts? We point them here to the multiple Google accounts page, which is a child of the Cron calendar page. We also have various other guides and FAQs here. So these are kind of the top level FAQs. When is Cron available for my platform? What is pricing, etc. And we've also just added a couple of weeks ago this new requests feature, which kicks you into an email client already templated so that you can give us some context as to what you're looking for in terms of a new feature, and already has these pre-built templates, which is really great because it lowers the friction to request new features. We also handle all of our security and trust communication directly through Notion. And so you can think of this as, cron.com/security really opens up this Notion page here. And so what this is all of the standard questions that you'd expect questions and answers that you'd expect to find around security. And it's all here on this Notion page. It's really easy. If I go into Notion and I go into the security and trust page here, I can quickly just add another toggle and you'll see that it appears right here. I mean, it's just fantastic. And so anytime we have a new general FAQ, we just add it in there. And we'll dive into this as part of the use cases specifically, but we take security and trust very seriously. We're working with sensitive information as a calendar company. And so we've thought through a lot of this stuff, and we've received a lot of these questions from the various enterprises that we work with already. And so one of the two use cases we'll touch on is GDPR compliance as a subprocessor of our customers as employees data, which is kind of a very interesting inception-y GDPR case. We handle a lot of that flow and a lot of the FAQs on this Notion page directly. So just to summarize, really what we're doing with Notion is creating an awesome internal knowledge base and running a lot of our core business workflows directly in Notion, and also extending our website, cron.com, directly with this Notion homepage. And so what we found is that these two sites really work hand in hand. And something that I'm just personally really excited about is I think that a lot of different websites are going to start extending themselves with their Notion homepages just because it's so easy to create them. I'll stop here for any questions and happy to answer any.
I love what you've done here. One thing I'm kind of curious about is, you mentioned you're a 3-person company, you're still a startup, but you've got lots of amazing documentation in there. And I think you've done a really great job with this stuff. I'm curious how long it took you to do this, or kind of, it just seems like you guys have really valued that documentation right up front. And that stuff can take companies, I think, a long time to put into writing. I'm just kind of curious what the process was like. Were you guys like on it right from the get-go? Were you already documenting this stuff from day one? I'm just curious to hear your perspective on that.
Sure, that's a great question, and I guess I'll start my answer by saying that our founder Raphael Schad, who's an amazing guy, is Swiss. So we're very detail oriented and punctual, which is related to this because we found that if you start documenting things early and often, it's a lot easier to maintain great documentation than retroactively trying to do all of that. So we found that usually to add great documentation, it probably takes, an extra 5-10 minutes. It adds that to whatever process you're running, but it's worth doing that in the short term because long term you have these incredible benefits, and it's a lot easier to maintain a system that's running really well as opposed to retroactively trying to do a lot of different things. So kind of a long-winded answer, but effectively, we think of this as kind of a process of continual improvement. And we're always jumping in and editing things. So for example, even little tiny details here, like if I noticed that this, for example, wasn't a code block and I was jumping into the page, then I'd quickly switch the Command K here to be a code block. And so we're just always looking to improve pages. And I think that's really, really deeply rooted into our culture and something that we hope to scale as we bring on more people as we grow.
I love it.
Can I ask a question, or maybe you can show us a little bit? I'd love to see a little bit about the similarities between your different teams. So you've got product design, engineering, wikis.
Sure.
What does your documentation process look like across those teams? Do you have any shared processes, or are they all kind of specific to the person leading that work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think because we're a 3-person team right now and we're all working in tandem, everyone is dabbling across all 3 areas of product design and engineering. And something that we've found really effective is actually allowing anyone to dive in between these 3 processes. So for example, in product, you can take a look here, or let's see, I'll pull up the design wiki actually, but here's a sample of kind of high level what you'd expect to find in terms of, hey, this is kind of how we do things at a really high level. And then if you look in, just kind of some sensitive data here, so probably won't open the engineering tab and walk through the run books there. But effectively what you'd expect to find here is something like, hey, we start off the page. This is kind of how things work at a high level. And then when we have specific runbooks, we'll actually create these toggles within the pages. And so let's say it's something like, hey, deploying to production, or hey, this is how you set up your dev environment. We have these mini guides that are built directly into these top level engineering pages. And we've separated them based on our different repos. So we have our API, our .com, DevOps, etc. Does that make sense, Oasis?
Oh, that was Ben that asked the question,
sorry,
but yeah,
sorry.
yeah, it's okay. Yeah, so maybe I think one thing I'd love for you to define is Runbook. I'm not familiar with that term, and I think maybe some of the audience might not be either. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So Runbook is just a repeatable process that's documented in such a way that anyone in the organization can come in and pick up that process instantly just by reading the Notion page itself.
Makes sense to me. We have a similar concept in firefighting called Runcards, where it defines which trucks are supposed to roll to which event, so you don't have to think about it. You just follow the instructions, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Danny just said kind of like an SOP. Erik, one thing I'm noticing about I know that you didn't want to dive too into the engineering wiki, but one thing I'm noticing that there might be an opportunity to improve here is it looks like you're using the strategy of sort of pages within pages. Mm-hmm. There might be an opportunity here for you to turn your documentation into a database. And so what I've done at a lot of companies and with our own services internally is we have a documentation database that we tag. We have statuses on our documentation. And there was one thing you said right out at the beginning of the meeting that you said document early and often and update and things like that. So one thing I found really valuable as your team starts to grow is a status on docs. So if I'm actually going through one of these run cards and I'm like, hey, I got stuck at step 4. Is this documentation accurate based on other external systems that it's changed? So I might be able to move that to the needs attention flag. Yep. So having an owner on the documentation, a person who we also have started doing this thing recently where we create a field called subscribers on a lot of our databases. And that way when so as you get bigger, people are going to want to make their own dashboards and mix up the data that they have available to them on their own dashboard. So my internal dashboard at my company, I have a thing that's like my documentation, and I use a linked database to include everything that I'm an owner on or I'm subscribed to. And I even might filter that further by needs update. So somebody's raised that I need to update this documentation because it's not accurate. This is a nice way of creating these personal dashboards that avoid that back and forth Slack stuff where somebody is like at here, hey, I'm trying to do this, but it doesn't work. Who's responsible for writing these docs? I'm not sure that your current setup with the pages has that defined where you have who's responsible for keeping these docs updated and so on and so forth. One thing I found valuable too, as we scale, when we start to get thousands and thousands and thousands of docs, is that the global search will often get polluted with a lot of other stuff. So it's really nice to keep those documentations in a database because the in-page database search is super fast compared to searching your entire space. So if I'm an engineer, I can go right to the engineering wiki. I can say and I would have a scoped view that would show me all the engineering data, and I could say README, and it would show me all the documentation that are tagged with the README tag or something like that. So I can really start to find information. So scoping all your docs and then using linked databases speeds things up, makes things categorize, and you can start to build some of these systems that you can request help from other employees on. So I think with 3 people, no problem, but once you get up to hundreds of employees, it's going to start to get a little bit unwieldy. You're going to have these engineering wikis that have 1,000 pages, and there's no way to sort that data. There's no way to organize it or categorize it at that point. So that's I think right off the gate, I'm seeing a real opportunity for you guys to organize that data a little bit better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And just a quick follow-up question on that. Something that we found is a lot of a lot of the times we'd like to have a couple of private pages where we're maybe getting something ready before we put it into our public database, or maybe it's even it's a private page in the sense that it's like owned by a team member, but it's shared publicly, and that does pollute the command K and just the overall search. So have you found any useful strategies in terms of like, hey, I have this page and I'm using it temporarily for brainstorming? Do you tend to keep that page in the private section, for example, before adding that into the team workspace?
So me personally, and Marie and I are doing some refactoring in our own space lately, but we tend to utilize groups really heavy-handedly compared to a lot of, I've seen this, like that very few Notion folks and people who are using it are utilizing groups really effectively. So we tend to do stuff where we start very, very scoped down on access controls on almost all of our data. So we basically start with this idea that no one has access to the workspace, and then we grant access by groups. So you might even define a public group space that you grant access to. And so that means like simply moving pages around groups can change the access levels. So there may be, for example, at our own company, we have an owner's workspace, which is Marie and myself. We have an admin workspace, which is Marie and I and our head of operations. And then we have a coach's workspace and so on and so forth. So we really utilize those groups pretty readily to scope access and to collect feedback from small groups. Like if you're building a new form or a new feature or something, you might even create an ephemeral group that, product feature A group, and add some people to it. And then, that way you can, once you start getting into lots of employees, it gets really difficult to, when you create a new private page and you share it with 20 people, and then somebody leaves the company and you have to go searching all over which groups were they in? What do they have access to? So yeah, I'm not sure if that really answers your question, but that's something that we've been leveraging a lot. Start creating your groups early, because it starts to get a little unwieldy if you don't define those high level groups early on.
Got it. Yeah, that's helpful. I think we haven't explored groups to the fullest extent, and that's definitely something where we can improve for sure.
Awesome. And yeah, if you're not using groups, you can absolutely just make a private page, invite your other coworker, work on it together before activating it and making it public.
Got it.
Yeah.
But that's also a great conversation too, Ben, as we talk about hiring, because I know that's one of the use cases we're going to talk about, and you've got some interesting opinions on almost having like an onboarding group potentially. So let's say you're hiring somebody new, you would only invite them into the onboarding group. And so they might only have access to one page that says, hey, welcome. And you've got all the instructions there, the things that you want them to do, the documentation you want them to read. You could put linked instances of your documentation database in there, only showing them what they need to see when they need to see it. Once they've completed that, then you could open up access to the full team. So there are some interesting ways you could use groups, even for improving your onboarding experience into your company.
Yeah, Erik, as a product lead, I'm sure you're familiar with this idea of like discoverability. And I think a lot of large Notion workspaces have great amounts of data and great ways of searching for things, but I think as product leads, we've got to start thinking about like, what are people actually doing in Notion? It's not just about the data connecting, but how can we build an experience that if I'm coming to Notion from the first person, first time experiencing all of this data, like what should I be exposed to first? And so, yeah, like that's something I've been thinking about in terms of moving people along a group's chain, so they start getting access to more information as needed.
Yeah, just reducing that overwhelm, because it's like, oh wow, like am I supposed to click on PR and ops and like sort of what's expected of them as they kind of come into this brand new workspace that's got so much amazing stuff in it, but they don't maybe need to know all of it right off the gate.
Yeah, just definitely reducing the scope, or kind of reducing the number of choices that you have to make as you're going through that onboarding flow, I think is kind of the first step for us, where it's like, hey, follow these 5 steps if you're coming into product, these 5 steps if you're coming into design, these 5 steps if you're engineering, something like that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And just another tip too on some of those pages where you've already got pages of documentation, super easy obviously to drag pages into databases. So it's not like you have to recreate the work or copy paste what you've already done. If you wanted to make a new documentation database, you can highlight all those pages, drag them in, give them the properties that you want, and keep moving along.
Got it. That's awesome.
Cool. Not sure if any other questions popped up while we were.
There's lots of great questions in the chat. I don't know if we want to quite deviate to those, or should we focus on the hiring and the job stuff first, and then try to get to some questions at the end? Probably a good idea.
That sounds best. Let's do
Sure.
that.
Sure. Sounds great. So I can jump back into screen share and then just walk through our hiring process.
Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. All right. We're back into the inception. Okay. Awesome. So we'll touch a little bit on the hiring right now. So really exciting, of course, as a fast growing startup, we want to hire incredible people that are also really interested in calendaring. And to do that, we've created a awesome Work at Cron page, which is actually a public page that's also hosted on our Notion homepage. So you can see here we have our description, our awesome mission, a little bit of an overview of what the product looks like. And here we track our open positions. And so right now we're looking for senior backend engineer, senior full stack engineer, senior front-end engineer. And we have a product designer post coming soon. And what we found is that all of these awesome roles have overlapping fields or overlapping parts of these pages. And so, for example, the mission, Cron's mission of building the time layer for the workplace of the future is consistent across all of our different roles that we're hiring for, right? It's not like we're changing the mission specifically based on each kind of employee or each teammate that we're hiring. And so what we found is there's actually a number of these overlapping sections of each one of our job descriptions. So for example, why you should join Cron, right? If you're interested in making a big impact, if you're interested in excellence and building awesome, well-crafted software and really owning that and driving unique parts of the product and having complete ownership there, that all stays consistent. Here, the responsibilities, this section varies from role to role, right? So the responsibilities of a senior backend engineer are going to be different than those of a product designer or a full stack engineer. And then we also see the qualifications. This part is also consistent across all of our different listings, right? We're really just looking for highly productive, awesome people with design sensibility that are fun to spend time with. And so the compensation also carries, and how to apply also carries and all of the additional information. And so what we found is that it would be nice to reduce redundancy across these different pages. And as we add different listings, make sure that we don't have to basically retype or recreate these common sections. And so what we've done for now is in our hiring page, we've created this template JD. And the way this works is that we have these synced blocks, and you can think of this template JD as the main JD. So we have all of these synced blocks that are kind of set in stone here. So we have our mission, why join, what we're looking for, what we offer, and we want to pull all of these blocks into the individual JDs. That way we don't have to rewrite everything in the unique JDs. And so what we've done is just taken these synced blocks, and when we create a new Work at Cron open position, we just pull those synced blocks in here. And so you can see that this why join is synced from the template JD. And what you'll do is customize specifically for this role. And so we're looking for ways to improve on this design, maybe using some more advanced features that Marie can share with us.
And yeah, we might even be able to just do it in your screen share, Eric. It might be cool to
Awesome.
kind of just walk you through kind of how I would do it. But it sounds
Okay.
like you've already, like the fact that you're using synced blocks is amazing. I know folks in the chat are saying it's such a time saver, right? When you've got, I think your use case is exactly a perfect illustration of synced blocks. Like there's just things that aren't going to change. So I'm curious, when you're setting up a new job description, are you just going to the JD and are you kind of highlighting all, copying it, pasting it into this new job description? Is that your process?
Yeah. So
Cool.
it's highly sophisticated.
No, it's great. Like that's the easiest first next step. And I think there's just a couple options that we have for making this a little bit faster. I think templates are a little misunderstood in Notion, or people don't know how to make the most of them. So I think there's two different ways that we could do this. One is through a simple template button, and the other is through a database template. And so I think we should actually do both just to kind of show you what that looks like. So let's go back to the page that has your job description template.
Okay.
Great. So and I would just go to the page above it. Your hiring.
Got it.
Great. So right below your template JD,
Yep.
put your cursor there, and I would hit / and start typing template. And look for template button.
Yep.
Great. And you can drag that template JD right into that, and you could call it create new job post.
Okay. So I'm dropping this here.
Yeah, right where it says to do, the little to-do list placeholder block.
Right there.
Yep. And I would just delete the to-do. And then where it says add new to-do, I would say add new job description. And that's just an example of how to do, instead of, duplicating the page, or instead of, copy pasting it, you can spit out a new job description and even drag it into work at Cron if you wanted to.
Got it.
Great. So if you close that,
yep,
and you test it out, you can click that new button. You'll kind of see a new job description up here. And I think it should open it by default. There you go. You can rename it. So it already gives you this to work with. In fact, I might even delete this job description template. That might be something that you want to put into that hiring page. So this is kind of like a ready to go. Maybe you already have the icon, right? That you have a little emoji icon and that sort of thing. So that's just a simple example of a template button. But I think in your case, because you already have that engineering database, let's copy paste everything that's in this job description into your template button in that database.
Okay, so I'm just selecting all here.
Yeah, let's select everything in here.
Okay.
We're going to do a copy paste.
Yep.
And make sure you're copying everything in the whole page. Yep, perfect.
Got it. Okay.
And then let's go back to that engineering database. I think it was in the work at Cron.
Got it. This right here.
Exactly. So yeah, in the engineering, I think you have just like a really simple job template in that database already.
Oh, so the sample awesome JD, this guy?
No, so you had a database with all of those engineering job descriptions?
Yep. So that's this guy right here.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think you should add a template button here. So whenever you're adding a new engineering role, you would just use that template here. So again, there's two different options, but let's go to that blue arrow beside your top right-hand side of that engineering database and edit your job description there, or make a new one.
Okay. So I'm opening this guy up.
So you don't want to click that. You want to click on the three dots on the right-hand side to make sure that you're actually editing the template.
Got it.
Perfect.
Okay.
And so this is where I would actually paste your original template. So whenever you make a new one, it's just already there, ready to go.
Got it. So now pasting in here.
You might have to delete that. Yeah, they're perfect.
Yeah. So I delete this block up here.
Yep.
Got it. Got it. And so here, this section, then what we're looking for, actually, no, this is great. This is everything we need.
Perfect. And you can, try it out again if you want to, show what it looks like when you spin up a new one. You can add any new properties in there. But I think it's simple. Like, you're already kind of doing the right thing. You're using the sync blocks. You've got a database for it. But now it just should be one click. It's already in there. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, and there's a little bit of cleanup for us here, but wow, that's really helpful. Thanks, Marie.
Awesome. yeah, it helps that you guys were already pretty advanced users and using those synced blocks. So just taking it that extra step further.
All right, that in here.
Cool. And if you wanted to as well, like you could hide any of those as well. So you could make some of those private. So if, let's say they're a work in progress, right? You could always hide an individual database entry.
Okay.
And just say, make it not public.
So it would just be with the sharing here.
Yeah, you should be able to turn that off. So hypothetically, if you are making that public in your public page, people wouldn't see that in progress job description.
Got it. That's awesome. So we'll just quickly jump into, there it is, already updated. And this is me viewing as anyone on the internet.
Awesome. Yeah, somebody was mentioning that solves their problem using a template for each part of the engineering documentation. Yeah, perfect.
That's great.
It might be an opportunity here too to move these databases into one and have a categorization tag so that you could have separate templates for create a new design job, create a new engineering job, and you could have you could go absolutely hog wild on making create a new TypeScript job, new backend engineer job.
Or it's been filled, right? Status has been filled, position's been filled. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool. It sounds like there's just a ton of awesome possibilities for us to explore here.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Did you want to jump into any questions?
Yeah, like Owe's thoughts on any questions that have popped up related to what we've shown?
Yeah, I think
I've answered a few in chat.
One of the things that we might want to consider, well, there's two things. One, Erik had shared a great use case on GDPR and how they use Notion to stay compliant with GDPR. So we can talk through that real quick. I think they're already doing a great version of it. There's minimal improvements that we need to do. It might be interesting to the audience. And then we could kind of take questions in the last couple minutes that come up. And I can throw those your way. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it sounds great. So I'll just jump back into screen share again then for this.
Put me on the hot seat.
Your voice is so calm. You're such a good walkthrough demo. Yeah. It's really good.
Awesome. Yeah. So just some context. So I'll pop open the screen share again for the third inception of the day and hide this. So Owe's mentioned that we're using Cron that we're using Notion to help us with some of our GDPR compliance flows at Cron. And what we've found, so just jumping back into Cron Calendar here and into our security and trust page. And again, this is our public facing extension to cron.com. What we've found is as a company that deals with employee data, anytime that we interact with any customer who has employees who are in the EU, we immediately fall under the purview of GDPR. Now, we don't necessarily touch any of our customers' customer data, so pretty meta here, but because we interact with the employees' data of our customers, so for example, if you work at like a large co and you use Cron and you're in Europe, you're also covered by GDPR. So we have to make sure that we are staying compliant with GDPR, and as part of that, we actually become something that's called a sub-processor for the data, the personal data of the employees at the company that's using Cron. So the TLDR here is that we have to keep a list of all of the sub-processors we use. So if you think of this tree, it's like company that's using Cron, and then these are the apps that Cron is using. And if the apps that Cron is using somehow might store data about the employees at the company that's using Cron, we need to keep a list of all of those apps. And so what we've done so far, and I'll just show this mini page that we built before the webinar, is we have this software subscriptions page. And this is where we track all of the different apps that we use. And when they get a status active, this is when we have to consider whether they are a sub-processor of our customers' data. And so what we've done so far is just check this little sub-processor box here. And on our security and trust page, we have a list called subprocessors that tracks basically one-to-one. Now, these are two separate tables, but this is basically just tracking one-to-one all of the different subprocessors that we've marked here under software subscriptions. And you'll notice here there's only 5 and here there's more. And that's just because this is kind of a mini table that we built to showcase what our internal software subscriptions page looks like. And what we really like to do here, and this is kind of us kind of shamelessly plugging for a feature request, is actually combine these two tables into one. What would be awesome is if we could here on our internal page, on our software subscriptions page, check this box and denote a vendor as a subprocessor. For this page on the, actually I can just go to the live version. For this table here on the cron.com Notion or Cron Notion site to immediately reflect, hey, we just added, let's say, amplitude as a subprocessor. And right now we've found that this is almost 100% possible, except that one last percent is that if you hide certain properties in a table, if you open up the page view for that row, you're still seeing the properties. And so for us, we might sometimes have certain notes here. And you can see I've denoted this in orange. This is information that's not really relevant to share on the public facing page, but we'd want to keep that note internally. And so right now we're blocked from combining these two tables into one, because if we hide, let's say, this note property, it still appears here if you open as page. And that's why we've had to actually create a separate table here. So feature request for Notion, we'd love to condense this into two tables. And I think that any company that's staying compliant with GDPR that's using Notion will find it really easy to update their subprocessors list with this table. So please add this as a feature, Notion.
I'll run over
So-
no, Eric. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so Erik mentioned that this is kind of a limitation, and Marie and I had played around offline seeing if we could build something to work around that. But I want to note that there may be an opportunity here, and this is probably beyond the amount of time that you would, as a engineering organization with 3 people, would want to spend on this problem. But in terms of solving this, there's an opportunity to leverage, say, automate.io or Zapier, where when you add or update a record in the internal subprocessors table, you could check, you could use like an if or some kind of conditional statement on your Zap and either zap into the subprocessors for public table or remove it or change the update the status there. That way you could have effectively a synced version that was totally separate data sets, but they were somehow linked via an automation. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you a little bit about your GDPR stuff, because I'm imagining when you're working with you're probably getting some enterprise clients now,
Sure.
and you're going to want them to sign a data processing addendum and that kind of thing. There's another opportunity where if you're managing an internal list of people that are signing that, you might do another automate or zap to once they've DocuSigned, zap that client into a sign the DPA. Only store the information that you need. You don't have to have their like signature and their private data in Notion if that's if you don't want to be collecting that. But that would be a nice way to kind of start automating some of that process away from having to manually come into Notion and change those sub-processors and things like that. Change it in one place, it gets zapped to another place.
Yeah, that sounds really handy. Right now, we're just storing a link to our page directly, or DPA directly from the Notion page, and it's a manual process. It's actually Raphael or I sending out a DocuSign to the enterprise customer we're working with. Right. So that would be fantastic to automate with the Zap or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. I think we have 2 minutes left. Can I just ask a quick 30-second question for either one of you? I think the general theme here is being able to manage a public site in Notion that enhances your core landing page. But like any quick best practices on how, Erik, maybe y'all do that, Marie or Ben, if you have recommendations on, because it's obviously can be a little anxiety creating when you have this like your private work, and then you have the shared spaces that you're sharing publicly. So any quick things that you want to share there?
Sure. I can just jump in with my 2 cents, and then Marie and Ben, feel free to take over. In terms of reducing anxiety, something you can do in your Notion pages that are internal or external is actually just add a call out or something that signals that it's an external page. That's something that we were doing before. Or it's something as simple as, hey, if you're on a specific page, only use a certain type of icon. Like for us, we're using our app icon here to denote, hey, this is a public page. So anytime you're on a page and you see that this is the icon for the page, okay, this is a public facing page. And so you're making changes to it. You need to be extra careful. But the thing we've noticed is that, really it's just so easy to spin out these pages and experiment with new ways to interact with customers through these pages, or showcase information in a really easy way, that we view this as kind of these like series of experiments of pages. And it's pretty, there's not a really high barrier of entry, or we shouldn't feel too restrained from doing that. So I think as long as you're being careful, as long as you're somehow denoting these pages as public, and you have a shared vocabulary internally about what does a page look like when it's public versus what does it look like when it's internal, it should be okay. What do you think, Marie and Ben?
My short answer is I have a page actually named public, and any pages that I have in there, I kind of dump into there for the most part. I keep it pretty simple. I don't think I have as many public facing pages the way you do with this, but I really like how you've done this, and it's definitely inspiring me.
Awesome. I think we're right at time. Perfect timing. Hopefully you got a good summary of multiple use cases, but especially the ones where you're enhancing your public sort of presence with Notion, public landing pages, public sites, and how you're updating those dynamically, as well as creating templates, in this case for jobs. I think we'll share some helpful information. If you want to sign up, Erik, I'll just share the site and They can request access. Is there any other specific information you wanted me to share with the group here?
Yeah, I think that's everything from my end. I guess I have the landing page up here, so just come on over to cron.com and enter your email if you're interested in requesting access. And after the webinar, I'll be inviting some folks by hand. So hope to see some of you guys there.
See you there.
Marie and I are excited to try it out.
I
just want to throw in one thought on that public private thing. One thing you might consider doing is so synced blocks can be private, and you can put a synced block in a public page. And one of the earlier things that we said is a limitation of Notion is actually a benefit, because you could create a synced block that has that call out that says, hey, this is a public page, be careful. And that synced block will not show on the public page. It'll only show internally. So if you if you put that synced block somewhere in your private space and then put that on all your public pages, that'll be a way that you could say like, hey, and the other thing is, again, leveraging groups, so that, as you grow, you're probably going to have a larger specific marketing team that's going to be managed the publicly facing docs. And, that would be a place where they could have edit access and everyone else could have comment or view access, so they could see things, comment on it, make suggestions for updates, but not have that public access to be able to, throw a horrible GIF or something onto the public facing site accidentally, something like that.
Awesome. With that, I think it's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for everyone that attended. Thank you so much, Erik and Ben and Marie, for doing such a pro level walkthrough, and hopefully it was useful, Erik. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Likewise, had a fantastic time, Marie, Ben, Oase. Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.